for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre, McGuire, and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche And after 22 years, Raymond Mark!
The sickest NHL podcast. Brought to you by TCS Customs and Logistics. Moving pieces, delivering peace of mind. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test here on the Sick Podcast Network. He's Pierre McGuire. I am Jimmy Murphy. And Pierre, we're almost there. We are almost to the finish line and the 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs set to begin on Saturday. The Eastern Conference is set now after the games last night. Still some things to be determined in the West, but pretty much what we know the teams that are in. It's just where they're going to play and who they're going to play. But I'm getting excited, Pierre. I don't know about you.
Congratulations to the Washington Capitals.
Yes.
What an amazing run for Spencer Carberry and his staff, and for Alexander Ovechkin getting the first goal of the game last night in Philadelphia. And character run by Washington down the stretch. The last 6 games, just phenomenal to watch. And, we only have one established series in the West, and that's Winnipeg and Colorado. Everything else is still up in the air, which is amazing when you consider it.
Yeah, it is. It is, Pierre. And I want to echo your thoughts on Washington, too. And look, I wasn't able to buy some crow at the supermarket just now to eat and some mustard to go with it. But in theory, I'm eating it there. Like many a times I counted them out, and many a times they made me eat crow. So good on them. I know I'm not the only one. People across the league did. But, I mean, just a resilient bunch. I actually heard the coach speak today.
Spencer Carberry.
Yeah. I heard him, and Pierre, he said it himself. He said, they even surprised me. He's like, I admit, a couple times I didn't know if is this it or what. And we knew that management was moving ahead with the future and not the present. So, a credit to those players. I'm sure Alex Ovechkin was at the forefront, but all the leaders in that dressing room who probably continue to rally the troops and say, guys, we believe in each other. Let's make this happen. We've got what it takes here. And Pierre, I look back, at those times right after the trade deadline. I think there was a game against Edmonton where they got smoked. I don't know if you remember that. It was like 9-2 or something, or 7-2. And I was like, that's it. I mean, it's clear that this is what they're doing. They're tanking it, and that's it. And then they just kept going, and they kept coming back. And of course, the guy who I think, Pierre, really he's not going to finish in the top 3, but if we're talking top 5, top 7, top 10 at the most, he has to be in the top 10, is Charlie Lindgren for the Heart. Like, just, he is their MVP. It's amazing what he has done.
Well, he was out of gas about 10 days ago. So the fact he was able to rekindle, and remember now, their win the other night on home ice was great. And then they have to go on the road and win in Philadelphia the next night. And Charlie plays back-to-back at the tail end of, which is a very long season for him. What's amazing to me about Washington, Backstrom's injury, obviously the chemistry he has with Ovechkin. Oshie was injured for good portions of this year, but he had a phenomenal finish to the year. And then you think about Kuznetsov not being there and being down in Carolina. You look at it and you're saying, wow, were they able to do this? Then you lose Jensen near the end of the year, who's a really important defenseman for them. I thought Vinny Iorio last night played almost 11 minutes, did a real nice job for them. A young kid, second-round pick out of the Western Hockey League, and he did a real good job for them. So they've done some really nice things development-wise in Hershey. They've done some excellent things development-wise in Washington, and hats off to them. Let's remember, too, they traded Anthony Mantha.
They traded Joel Edmondson. So, you start looking at it, what they've done there is pretty amazing. It's shocking, and it speaks to leadership, it speaks to coaching, and it speaks to the goaltender you're talking about in Charlie Lindgren. Pierre, you've been a young coach in a veteran locker room before, and I wonder, for Carberry, when they got to that point where it's a couple points where it looked like maybe it was done, how do you, as a young coach, give your input, try to motivate, but at the same time, let the core of the dressing room lead the way?
I think one of the things that probably helped Spencer was being in Toronto, in a high-profile market, and not having success, not being him, but the team not having success. So you learn what went right and what went wrong. And so you evaluate, and not from a position of scrutiny because you're the assistant coach. But I think there are two other things. Scotty Allen's a veteran coach around hockey. tremendous penalty killing coach, one of the best in the National Hockey League, if not the world. So he's there with Spencer and Kirk Muller. Kirk Muller's been a head coach in the NHL. He was a second overall pick. He's been a tremendous coach as an assistant coach in the NHL. So Spencer surrounded himself with real good people. And then you add in Mitch Love, who's got a wealth of experience coaching. That's a strong staff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as a young coach, when you have that kind of veteran presence around you, it helps a lot. It
Good
really
stuff.
does.
They're an amazing story. And look, I want to tell, we got a new sponsor, Pierre, and I want to talk to you about that right now. And maybe, hey, you know, I don't know if they're going to beat the Rangers. They're obviously going to be heavy underdogs in the first round against the New York Rangers, but you could get some good value. Maybe they steal game one. You never know, because we've seen it so many times where that 8th seed comes in on a roll with all that momentum, and maybe we saw it last year with the President's Trophy winner in the Boston Bruins versus the Florida Panthers. The Rangers are in that situation now where they're the President's Trophy winner facing a team that's already in playoff mode, so to speak, that has really been rolling for a while now. And if you want to maybe get some good value on that, or you want to go the other way with the Rangers, you got to go to our new sponsor, CBET. There's no precise script. They are the best sporting betting page with the best odds that they can find all their favorite games. They will give you, now get ready for this, Pierre, on your first bet, you will be refunded up to $3,000 Canadian with your SICK code. So just use the code SICK. And if you go to CBET, that's where you'll get that refund on your first bet there. So already you're winning some money, even if you lose. So I would advise everybody to check out our new sponsor there, CBET. Welcome aboard to the eye test to CBET. And you know, you look right now, there's so many different things you can look at, whether it's props for players, it's props for the games, it's props for period by period. There's a ton of things you can look at right now. And I'll tell you, Pierre, I mean, I don't particularly bet anymore, but when I'm looking at these series right now, I don't think that series is going to be as easy for the Rangers as everyone thinks. I really do think there's something to be said about momentum coming into a playoff series. And I want to get to this on some teams that are on the flip side of that in a second. But I just went right off the Capitals yet because they have proven me wrong all season. So I don't think it's as easy as it will be. But hey, go to CBET right now and check out the value you can get on them or on the Rangers or on any team that's already secured a playoff spot. Speaking of teams, Pierre, I don't know if we lost Pierre. You there? We lost your sound, Pierre. We'll work on it. No worries, but I want to say to Pierre, too, and to the viewers, also want to talk right now about our other sponsor. And I mean, guys, they are the best transport company out there. I've talked to some people that have used them already since they've signed on with us, and that is TCS, where you can unlock the full potential of your shipping operation with TCS Customs and Logistics. From around the corner to around the world, flatbeds to air freight, customs clearance to drawback consulting, TCS is a one-stop shop for all things transport, moving pieces and delivering peace of mind. They've also got their own customs system as well. So for no obligation customs or freight quote contact, email sickpodcast@shiptcs.com. Again, that's sickpodcast@shiptcs.com. That is who you go to right now. They're a sponsor. So what I want to talk to you about, Pierre, right now, and I think this is a huge thing, and I obviously learned it covering firsthand last year when the Florida Panthers came in, just already in full playoff mode. Went down to the wire for them to make the playoffs, just like the 8th seed Washington Capitals this year. They were the 8th seed last year. And then, of course, they upset a team that had one of the best regular seasons in NHL history, and that was the Boston Bruins. They had, 135 points, 65 wins. I mean, it was insane. And then Florida comes in. They're down 3-1 in the series, and they come back, and they win it in 7. They actually extend that momentum all the way to the Stanley Cup final. So what I'm trying to say right now, everybody, and definitely if you're going to be betting, just take this advice. Don't necessarily go on stats from the regular season. Don't necessarily go with records. Don't necessarily go with previous playoff history. Go with where the teams are trending. Go with where teams are feeling it right now. like the Washington Capitals. All right. On the flip side, you got a team that could have clinched the Atlantic Division that I cover in the Boston Bruins, had a chance twice to do it. And for whatever reason, I don't know if they were, like I said yesterday, I don't know if they just said, who cares? If we do, we face the Maple Leafs. We've owned them in the playoffs. They haven't beat us since 1959. We got 3 straight Game 7 victories over them. Don't necessarily look at those teams as the teams that are going to come out on top in the playoffs. I think it's all about momentum. That's why I think if you're a team that's one of the top seeds, I think you really need to set the tone, especially if you're the home team, in that first game and essentially the second game as well, because you do not want to split on home ice and have the danger of coming back down 3-1. So I saw that too many times in the past. I think the Montreal Canadiens a couple times did it to the Bruins back in 2002 and 2004. Pay attention to the trends. Look at the Winnipeg Jets. We've been hyping them up here. That's a team, if I'm the Colorado Avalanche, I am very afraid of right now.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is you're never in trouble in a playoff series till you lose on home ice. So your ideology on the split is well-founded. Colorado, Winnipeg, I think it's going to come down to goaltending. And if Georgiev can't get it back on the rails and Hellebuyck can play like he's been playing this season, which is as good or better than anybody else in the league, that's a tough series for Colorado to win. I don't care how much firepower they have. Their goalie's got to be better than the other team's goalie. And if he is, then they got a legitimate chance to win. If he's not, it's going to be a battle. That's going to be a real tough series. I don't like to do prognostication on series. I just like to state where I think teams are trending one way or the other. I think that use of terminology by you, Jimmy, is spot on. Trending really matters going into the playoffs. People are going to say, well, the New York Islanders are trending up. They are. Carolina, forget last night. Carolina didn't want to get anybody hurt, when they was in Columbus. And they played a bunch of kids. Scotty Morrow played in the game. Bradley Nadeau played in the game. Jackson Blake played in the game. The only thing bad that came out of that is Jesper Fast got hurt.
Yes.
So all I'm going to say is that teams that trend up usually, not always, usually have some real good success coming out of the gate.
Okay.
Playoffs.
I agree. And here's the thing I'm worried about with the team that I cover, Pierre. Very weird is the word, I guess I'll describe it. Press conference from Jim Montgomery last night. Very brief, too. He ended it abruptly. And so let me just summarize it. And I apologize I didn't cut up the sound. I should have done that for our production crew. But to make a long story short, he comes in there and he seems very not happy, very disheveled. And yet he's trying to say, oh, well, look at what Carolina, they lost to Columbus. These last few games, they don't really mean anything. But he also said at one point, and I thought this was very key, he says, well, we've got a couple days to see where the pieces fit in a puzzle. You just played 82 games. If you don't know where the pieces fit at this point, I'm a little worried about where you are heading into the playoffs. And then the other thing that was interesting, Pierre, was, and for anyone who saw that game last night, it was clear as day who coughed up the puck to Artem Zub, who went in there and got an empty net goal in the third period to put the Bruins away and for a 3-1 win for the Ottawa Senators, and that was David Pastrnak. And Kevin Paul DuPont asked Jim Montgomery about that turnover, and Montgomery almost got a little agitated and says, that wasn't Pastrnak. What are you talking about? And we all just kind of looked at each other like, and they said, at the end, he kind of covered it and said, oh, well, maybe I didn't see it right. Okay. But what I'm trying to get at here is this is a coach I've gotten to know very well. And win or lose, he's usually affable. He's very insightful with his answers. He's always upbeat. And he wasn't that last night. And it just really struck me that he is in a state of mind like that as his team is getting ready to go into the playoffs. And we all know what happened last year. I'm just wondering if, they're starting to see visions of what happened last year and they're getting a bit nervous about what could happen here with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into it too much. Unfortunately, that's what us reporters do. But it was really interesting because it was just not the Jim Montgomery I was used to.
I think you're overreacting.
Okay, good. That's why I came to you for the advice, my friend.
The only thing I'd say is that, people wondered about Jimmy's practice before they went on that elongated road trip. at the end of the year, and he knew exactly what he was doing with his team. So he was getting his team into a battle frame of mind, and they battled. They had a heck of a trip. Even you would admit that, Jimmy.
Oh, yeah.
And so what I'd say is
I think it saved the season, that practice, to be honest. I really do. I think that was part of the way they reeled it in.
I think he's just trying to get everybody in playoff mode. And it comes back to the saying that the great Scotty Bowman had for so many years with the media. You don't need them when you're winning, and they can't help you when you're losing. So, it's the reality of the business. It's hard on reporters. Kevin Paul DuPont's a Hall of Fame reporter.
Yeah.
He's not going to report junk. He's a top-end reporter. I know how hard you work at your craft. You're a top-end reporter. You do a really good job. That's why I love being on the show with you. But I would just say sometimes people overrate press conferences.
Okay.
I don't think you win playoff series or games because of press conferences. I'll give you a case in point. After Mike Keenan's team lost game 1 in Pittsburgh in 1992, you can go look at it online. He was talking about how we were dirty and roughing guys up, and he brought in, I think JR had a cast on, and he's like they were trying to set the tone so the officials would call penalties against us. Never worked. We won in 4 straight.
Yeah.
So, you don't, as much as people enjoy it,
right.
And I know how much people love watching Tortorella's press conferences, those don't win or lose you games.
Yeah.
They might lose you players. They might. You might get players that either really like you or really hate you, but they're not going to affect the outcome of a game. When guys get on the field of play, those press conferences mean nothing.
Okay. But what I think means something, Pierre, and maybe you'll disagree with me on this too, is being in the right mindset going in. I didn't see a team in the last 2 games in the Boston Bruins that was in the right state of mind, was playing where they need to be. Now, maybe, again, I'm overreacting. Maybe they're just like, we're in the playoffs, whatever. We're just going to do our thing, make sure nobody gets hurt, and get in there safe, and then we'll get down to business. But still, like I'm saying, we talk about momentum. Don't you want to have a little bit of momentum? Win or lose those games. I just feel like you want to have a sense that you're playing the right way. And I don't think the Bruins can honestly look in the mirror and say they're playing the right way in the last 2 games of the season.
Well, they were really bad in Washington. They only had 16 shots on net. They weren't much better last night against Ottawa.
Third period.
That's what I'm saying. They weren't much better. In the third period, they upped the ante, and I think you get a little bit excited about that. But I agree with everything you just said. They have not played well the last 2 games. That being said, maybe, I don't know, maybe they said, hey, if we don't play Tampa, maybe that's not such a bad thing.
No, careful what you wish for.
Yeah, well, I know. I listen, I never disrespect anybody in this league. You know why? Because it's a hard league to be in, number one. And number two, everybody gets paid in the league. They're all pros. Everybody's a pro. You're going to have – so I think one of the things, and I wanted to say this before, Jimmy, when you were talking about making the pieces fit, coaches talk that way when they sit down before a playoff series to create game plans. Okay. And I think that's what he might have been alluding to. And I'm not trying to suck up to Jimmy Montgomery.
No, I know that.
I don't think I have to. But what I can say is I can defend him. I can defend him from a point of view of having been in his shoes and saying, okay, we've got to deal with Austin Matthews. How are we going to deal with that? We've got to deal with a power play that's really good. So who are we going to attack on that? Are we going to attack Nylander? Are we going to attack Matthews? Are we going to attack Marner? Like what is our modus operandi on the penalty kill? How are we going to establish power play chances against their penalty kill? What are we going to do to eliminate David Kampf, one of their best faceoff guys, from being good in faceoffs? So those are the puzzle pieces that I think he's probably alluding to from that comment. And that's once the season ends, Jimmy. And again, every coach is different, but I can tell you when the season's over and you're fortunate enough to be in the playoffs, you don't care about the season. You got to focus on the next thing. And the next big thing for them is they have to deal with the puzzle pieces that are the Toronto Maple Leafs.
And what to you are the biggest puzzles on that besides Austin Matthews?
Well, you got to find out how you're going to establish a forecheck game, because I think that's where Toronto gets themselves in trouble. They don't really understand how to deal with an aggressive forecheck. We've seen that ad infinitum from the Florida Panthers whenever they play Toronto. So that would be one of the things. I'd be in touch with our video room and say, okay, get me 7 to 10 minutes of Florida Panther forechecks on Toronto. And then I would want to see, from the Boston perspective, whenever we played Toronto, what did they do to breach our systems, and how are we going to make sure they can't breach them in a playoff series? So you want to see the negative parts of your team against them, and then you want to see the positive things from your team versus them. So there's lots of different ways. Tape has definitely helped. Tape has totally changed how coaches approach this stuff. It really does.
On that note, and I want to paint it more in a broad picture, not just specified to Boston, but I want to use Boston as an example. You said, what did we do right against Toronto? They were 4-0 against Toronto this year. 2 of those games did go to extra time, and the other 2 were both 4-1 wins. But when you go 4-0 against a team in the regular season, how do you, and you just referenced this a couple of minutes ago, it's a new season and you don't care about the regular season. How do you get that mindset of that doesn't matter what you did in terms of the record against the team into your players? How do you not let them sort of maybe lean back on, hey, we were 4-0 against these guys?
Well, Charlie Coyle's got to be a difference maker. Marchand's got to be a difference maker. I go back to the veteran players on the team that have dipped their toe into the playoff pool, and they understand what it takes. There's some young guys on that team that really have never had NHL playoff or great NHL playoff experience. So they're going to have to learn from the older guys. I think it starts probably with your first meeting. I just remember the 91 Penguin team. And again, I was involved in it. I remember we played the Rangers the last game of the year, and we got on the plane at LaGuardia to fly back to Pittsburgh. And Bob Johnson saying, you got the team tomorrow, make sure your meeting's ready. We have to know how to beat the New Jersey Devils. And so once we landed in Pittsburgh, I just spent the night, at the office, breaking everything down and being ready. And Bob put as much emphasis on the off-ice meeting space than he did with we'd practiced enough. Guys knew what we had to do. Yeah. And so it was getting guys mentally prepared. And that first meeting, the initial meeting, when you're running a team, is before a playoff series, probably as important as any meeting you're going to have all year, because it sets the tone. It really sets the tone.
Pierre, who was it? I think somebody, I was listening to Toronto radio today on 1050 there, and they were talking about, the Leafs aren't going home. They're going right to Boston. So once they're done, they're going to Boston right away. There's no point in going back and then flying out again. So one of the announcers was saying, well, that might be a disadvantage to them. And the other announcer said, no, it's a great advantage. You want to just get in your zone, and that helps even more when you're on the road, because nothing's there to distract you from your routine, whether it's family obligations or whatever, or the bigger scope of the media that isn't necessarily traveling anymore these days, because that's just the way it is. He said it's great, actually. Sometimes a road team has an advantage that way. What was it like for you guys when you get to the playoffs? Was there anything special you did to kind of block out the noise? I know I talked to Billy Guerin once, who told me that they stayed, that 95 run they made to the Cup with the New Jersey Devils, he told me they stayed in a hotel room, even at home games.
Yeah, well, the Montreal Canadiens were famous for that. Going back to the 1950s, they used to stay at a hotel in northern Quebec called the Sapinière, which is in Valmorin, Quebec. And then when Pat Burns was coaching and Jean Perron were coaching, they used to stay at a hotel in downtown Montreal, and it was on an island, believe it or not. And the guys used to call it Devil's Island. And by the way, I know exactly where Billy Guerin and his New Jersey Devils teammates stayed. It was the Glen Point Marriott in New Jersey, right outside of Hackensack.
Okay.
And so I remember, and this is, believe me, I use Marriott hotels as much as anybody. But one of the players told me once, he goes, it's not the Glen Point Marriott, it's the Gun Point Marriott, because every time you try to get out, there's somebody from the Devil security there making sure you stay in. So, it was those were interesting times. Yeah. You know what? I will say this, Jimmy. I'm glad you brought that up. In 91, we made it optional for the players, if they wanted on home games, to stay in the hotel. And back then, the Vista Hotel was right downtown Pittsburgh. Now it's a Westin Hotel, but it was called the Vista back then. And a lot of the guys didn't really take us up on it early in the playoffs, but as it went deeper and deeper, they started staying more often at the hotel. And then the second year, we made it optional again, and I think almost every player took the option. They just wanted to stay there. It's really about the mind. I talked about the mindset, Jimmy.
Yep.
The first meeting dictates the mindset. It really does. And it doesn't mean you can have a great meeting and you're going to win, but you're going to establish something that hopefully the players can utilize and the coaches can utilize. It will make your team better prepared to play.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, I always love that story that Billy told me about that. He also said, thankfully, they had pretty good room service. So,
well, here's one thing I know. He was playing for a gentleman, Louis J. Lamorello, who loves really good food, and he really does. And I can tell you this, every single player that I've ever spoken to that played in his organizations, they never got mistreated off the ice. They were treated unbelievably well. And so I guarantee you the food was really good.
Yeah. And that was their first Stanley Cup, the New Jersey Devils. There you go. All right, Pierre. And then, by the way, I see Puck Bunny's I didn't even notice it before I brought it up to you, but he actually said, I read where in the past teams would isolate during the playoffs. Any idea why they stopped doing that? So there you go. We were just talking about it. Yeah. Good stuff there. Pierre, looking around though, I mean, we know the East is set. So you're going to get Florida, Tampa. And Tampa. Yep. And we already mentioned New York and Carolina.
Yep.
I mean, Carolina, New York. Pierre, the Rangers and the Capitals. As I said, I think the Rangers win that series, but I just think it might be a little closer. I don't want you to prognosticate, but when you look at, I want you to just look at each team in each series and give me one strength, one weakness. If we could do that, would that be good?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, 100%.
Right. So let's start. Let's start with the New York Rangers and the Washington Capitals. Give me a strength and weakness from the Rangers.
Rangers' strength will be offense and attack ability offensively. Weakness will be lack of depth on defense. So they've got to stay healthy. And if you look at Washington, one of the things you have to have in there, the physicality of the Washington Capitals, especially Tom Wilson. So I think that's something to watch. And Tommy's no shrinking violet, as we all know. Ovechkin in playoff mode is a physical beast. So that is a strength for Washington, not a weakness. And I think Washington's playing with house money, and that's a dangerous opponent to play against. They're just happy to be having their season extended. And if they can go deeper, then they become real dangerous. So again, Shesterkin is obviously on paper a better goalie, but Charlie Lindgren's brother Ryan plays in front of Shesterkin, so he's playing for something too.
Yeah.
It's called bragging rights at home. So I think that the balances pro and con are pretty apparent. If Washington takes penalties, I think they have a tough series. I think the Rangers power play will devour them. The other strength for Rangers, and we've talked about a lot this year, their face-off play is really good, and it's better than Washington's. So face-offs are going to matter. If you're Washington, you want to try to limit the amount of face-offs. You want to keep the puck in play if you can. If you're Rangers, you're not afraid of face-off situations because you're probably going to be pretty good in them.
All right, Florida and Tampa Bay.
Florida's got the advantage just because of the way they play the four-line attack, and they're going to go right after the Tampa defense. And it's not the same Tampa defense. It used to have Jan Ruda and obviously Ryan McDonough. It's different. They've got different guys back there, a lot of inexperienced players on the back end. So Florida's going to go after that. So that's a strength for Florida. The goaltending matchup is pretty equal. Bobrovsky's been.
That might be the most even in the whole playoffs, Pierre, if you look at it.
It's an pretty equal situation. One of the strengths I would say for Tampa is their power play. If Sam Bennett plays undisciplined, or Matthew Tkachuk plays undisciplined, or Nick Cousins plays undisciplined, they're going to have a problem. Barkov's got the ability to shut down, a top offensive player and still manufacture points. So that's another strength for Florida. I would say the biggest thing for Tampa is don't fall behind in games. It's going to be hard for them to get back in games they fall behind. So whenever they get power play opportunities, they got to take advantage, and they've got to try to score early.
Who's a guy to you on Tampa that could really agitate Florida and get? I know the Panthers have Nick Cousins, right? But who's a guy on Tampa Bay that could do that?
Hagel could be that guy, and the other guy's Cirelli. That Anthony's a really good player. I remember when he came in the league, and we're doing games with Doc and Eddie Olchuk.
Yeah, I remember you
talking about Cirelli and how good I thought he was going to be. and he's done very, very well. Anthony's been outstanding, but he can get under your skin. He doesn't do it verbally so much. He does it physically, and Hagel can do it physically, and he can also do it verbally. So those are two guys I think can do that for Tampa.
All right, good stuff. All right, now let's look at Islanders, Carolina.
Carolina's got more depth. They got more team speed. They get more pucks to the goal. Brendan Moore's as good a coach, if not better than Patty. And it's not a knock on Patrick. Patrick's a really good coach, Patrick Roy, but Brendan Moore's got way more reps at a higher level than Patty does. So Carolina, I just think there's depth all over. Question mark's going to be, what do they get in goal? What do they get in goal? Now, they might get Freddie Anderson being great. I don't know. They might get somebody else being great. I don't know. I just don't know. We'll see. For the Islanders, I like what Patty did. Creative coaching, putting Cizikas with Horvat and Barzal, I think has really helped that line. It takes a lot of pressure off of Brock Nelson. But the biggest thing for the Islanders, they've got to play tight, disciplined hockey. And if they don't, I just think the shot volume will wear them down, and that'll be a problem in the series. All
right, Bruins, Leafs.
I'm going to take a Jimmy Montgomery phrase, figuring out the puzzle that is Toronto. You got to do a real good job on star players. So you have to decide who you're just going to sacrifice a little bit of offense from to play defensively, especially against Austin Matthews and Nylander. The one thing I say is people, Tavares didn't have a great offensive season, but he had a good year. And he's a little overlooked right now. And
thank you, Pierre. I was just going to go there. Thank you.
If JT really explodes offensively, like he's shown that he's capable of early in his career, Boston, I don't know if Boston can measure that. So it's going to be a problem. The Bruins, I would play a heavy forecheck game. I just deploy and play heavy forecheck. Yeah. And really try to break down Toronto's in zone coverage, because I think that's really been a weakness for them.
And then, of course, I think we got to give the edge to the Bruins in goaltending.
Oh, I didn't even bring it up because it's taken. I just take that for granted. People would know that.
But I do think, too, the one thing Toronto has going for it this time, and you just brought it up, just to elaborate on Tavares, is the depth up the middle. It really, that could be a major difference, I think, in the series. Like, I think Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacher have done an amazing job here. But after that, I don't know. I don't know what you get in that.
They don't know. Neither is Jimmy. He doesn't know. Johnny Beecher hasn't.
Johnny Beecher's not going to be playing center. They've already delegated him to wing. He's just in there for faceoffs. Morgan Geekie, he's done all right. He's done good, but I don't know if he's ready, for this task yet. I think he's developing still. So I give the edge to the Maple Leafs at center. But yeah, the forecheck's a big thing. The other thing too, Pierre, I wanted to ask, in terms of a defenseman to go out there against the Leafs' best line, I think Brandon Carlo could be a little, it's not secret weapon, but maybe somebody that people aren't talking about enough, because I think he had his best season in a Boston Bruins uniform.
I thought Brandon was great. I'm so glad you're bringing that up. I totally agree, Jimmy. He's a playoff style player too, because matchups do matter. I'm not.
If he stays healthy, they could be.
I'm not saying he's as good as Shell Samuelson was for our team when I was coaching in Pittsburgh, but Shell was a really important player for us. As much of an important player as Alfie Samuelson was, and Alfie was critically important, because we just played straight matchups. Every single game, every single series, we played straight matchup. And we would drive the opposition nuts because they didn't know where we were coming from.
Yeah.
And so you've got to make sure that if you're Toronto, you see early in the series who they're playing Carlo against.
Yep.
And if they're playing a matchup game, then there's different ways of breaking that down if you're Toronto. And there's different ways to camouflage it if you're Boston. So, you just got to figure that out as a staff.
Good stuff. Well, before we go on, Pierre, I want to mention our good man Bob Morgan sent me some more this date in history, Pierre. And we're talking about Toronto right now. So let's go to April 17th, 1977, Pierre. Toronto's Darryl Sittler became the first player in NHL history to score multiple points in 7 straight playoff games with 3 assists. And Lanny McDonald had 4 goals and an assist in a 6-5 loss at Philly in Game 4 of the quarterfinals. Pierre, I never got the pleasure of seeing either. I saw Lanny McDonald play, but not Darryl Sittler. What was he like?
He's a phenomenal offensive juggernaut. I mean, when he was a member of the Leafs, he was really talented offensively. He moved around a little bit in Detroit, a little bit in Philadelphia, but he was really talented offensively. This is a little. I don't know if you remember when Sidney Crosby was playing early on in his career. He used to have Daryl written on the cuff of his of his gloves. Yeah.
Wow.
That was his nickname, Daryl.
Huh. Did it have to do with Sittler or no?
Yeah.
Wow. How did that come about? Do you know?
Daryl used to get a lot of points.
Wow, that's awesome.
So Sid would get a lot of points.
Well, you know what? I'm going to do one more there because I was scrolling through here, and here's a good one right now. April 17th, 2006, Pittsburgh's 18-year-old rookie, Sidney Crosby, set up 3 goals to become the youngest player in NHL history to score 100 points in a season in a 6-1 win over the visiting New York Islanders. So there you go.
There you go. Perfect. Bobby Borgen nailing it again. That's fantastic. Yep. He's so good. He's such a good person.
He's great.
He's awesome at this stuff. He's really good.
Well, I got to get that script. He wants my Gump Worsley script, so I got to get that to him to check it out. Before we head to questions, Pierre, some news out of Montreal. Martin St. Louis is extended for 2 seasons. What your thoughts on that? I mean, I feel like it's a no-brainer, but some people out there are a little surprised. What's your thoughts?
No. Why would you be surprised? 100%. I think he's going to tweak his staff a little bit.
Yep.
I do. I think he'll make subtle little changes with his staff, but he should be the coach there. He's done a really good job with that team. That team, look, I know people are upset the last 2 games against Detroit. They had substantial leads, 4-1, 3-1. They lost them both. Look at the situation. You're breaking in kids in Montreal. Detroit's going for a playoff position.
Yeah.
They ran out of racetrack. They didn't get it. But I give Detroit a ton of credit, and I give Montreal a ton of credit for just getting points out of those 2 games. They're phenomenal games. I watched both of them from start to finish. They're great games. So the only thing I'll say about Marty is I think maybe a little bit more seasoned assistant comes in to help him in terms of game management situations. Because as you get better as a team, the game management part matters for a coach. But outside of that, I think he's done a fantastic job there.
Good stuff. And he's unreal. And by the way, those games too, Pierre, invaluable experience for those kids.
Those
just
are like
valuable. I mean,
I think Logan Mayhew said it best. He goes, "That was like a playoff environment," and he'd never been in an NHL playoff game.
Great.
It just shows you.
We were in so we're waiting for Jimmy to come out, for Monty to come out and speak to us. And I had my laptop with that game going. The whole media room was circled around me watching the game. Everyone was into it. We were going between that and then Florida and Toronto. It was just the last couple nights of hockey have been so great for the NHL. And, people can say all they want, that they don't like parity, whatever. Tell me that this hasn't been fun. And tell me you haven't gotten games where in the beginning of the season you looked at the schedule and said, whatever, I'm not going to watch those games. And then you get to this point and all of a sudden they're huge games. I think it's been great for the NHL and good on them.
Yeah, and great on the scheduling people. Steve Petros and the people in New York coming up with a real good schedule. I don't know how they figured this one out, but those were some dynamic finishing games.
Yeah.
There's no question. Jimmy, I'm in South Carolina, being totally transparent. I'm giving a big speech tonight about the NHL season and also about the upcoming playoffs. And I was working out this morning early with the gentleman that's going to be there who's running it. And he said it's already sold out.
That's awesome. That's great.
I'm not in the heart of hockey country here.
No.
I'm in the heart of, football, baseball, basketball, and they're just coming off the Masters.
Yep.
Tennis and golf are pretty substantial sports here. So for him to have said that to me, I can't wait, for tonight. And that's, by the way, just so everybody knows, that's why the podcast is a little earlier today. Got to be over at the building.
And Pierre, we're going to get you out in a bit. So let's go right to those questions right now. And by the way, we know we said Scotty Bowman would be on today, but you know what? Schedule-wise, it didn't work for all of us. But it works out better because tomorrow we're going to have a better idea of the Western Conference as well. So we can tee up the whole Stanley Cup playoffs with the one and only, the boss of hockey, Scotty Bowman. Right there. So let's get right to it. What do we got for questions? All right, Ron LaRock. Pierre, if Lavelle Rocket fire their coach, who gets the job?
No idea. I don't even speculate on coaches being fired. I don't want coaches to be fired. And I think that JF Fool's done some really good work there.
I was just going to say, I think
he's done nice work there. Look when Logan Mayu comes up and plays. He looks like he fits. That's your job.
Perfect.
Yeah, your job in the American Hockey League. Brian Burke told me this. Craig Patrick told me this. All these really good general managers have told me this over time. When you coach in the American Hockey League, or back in the day, the old IHL, the International Hockey League, your job, they want to win. The owners in particular want to win.
Of course.
But your job is to produce players that can step up and play.
It's a developmental league.
It is.
Yep.
And so I know people are saying, oh, well, they might miss the playoffs. So they've got 2 big games coming up with Belleville. Not easy. But the players that have come up have been ready to play.
Yeah, and I like what you just said. The way that they're able to make that seamless transition, to me, that means the coaching staff there has done their job. So,
yep.
All right, next question. Jason Logan, Murphy and Pierre. What's up, Jay? Which match are you guys looking forward to most? All of them. I hate to give you a general answer, but all of them.
You know which I'm looking at 2.
Okay.
Colorado, Winnipeg.
Yeah.
I think if Colorado doesn't win, it's going to be tough for people in Denver to digest.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll be watching that one. And the other one is Florida, Tampa.
Oh yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, Pierre. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Jimmy, the Florida Tampa one, everybody's in love with Florida right now. Tampa knows how to win.
Yeah.
Now, are they the same team that went to the final 3 years in a row and won 2 out of 3 times? No, they're not.
Nope.
There are a lot of guys that have moved on to other places, but they've done a nice job there, and they've got a goalie that I think is starting to trend upwards in Vasilevsky. So that's one of the series I'm really looking forward to watching.
And that's an underrated and rising rivalry. It was interesting, Pierre. Like I'm sitting there, and I actually was texting with Jack Edwards last night. And I texted him and said, "Hey, congratulations on a great career." And this was after the games, and we knew the matchups were set. And he said, "Look at these great matchups we're getting. I mean, nobody talks about Florida Tampa." He's like, "I'm telling you, Jimmy, those games are going to be intense." And of course, I get to call Toronto Boston as my last playoff series of my career. I'm pretty psyched about that. So Washington Rangers, they go back a ways. There's some rivalry there. There's a lot of good stuff going on there in terms of rivalry. So I like it.
Well, what happens if Vegas plays Edmonton in the first round?
Oh, geez. That could be a hell. And okay, so I'm going to take a mulligan. If that happens, I'm going to say that series, and I'm going to say the series I get to cover too, because anytime you get to cover Toronto, Boston, it's always a privilege. So I'm looking.
Any original 6 matchup is always a privilege. Yeah. It really matters. It does.
I do long for another Montreal Boston though. Hopefully in the next couple of years.
That could happen soon.
Yep. I'm looking forward to it. All right, next question. Randy Workman, Pierre and Jimmy, do you think the Avs make huge changes if they get upset by the Jets? I don't know about huge, Pierre, but I think there'll be a change between that. I'll tell you that.
Well, I think they'll evaluate the goaltending position for sure. Yeah. But I don't think huge change. I mean, the roster's really good.
Yeah.
It's interesting because Bowen Byram gets traded out for Casey Middlestat. You can argue it's been a really good hockey trade for both teams. I know Buffalo didn't make the playoffs, but Bowen Byram played well there.
He was great. He was a good fit.
Middlestat has been a really good fit for them as well. So they made a lot of changes last summer too. People forget, you got Miles Wood that went out there. You have Ross Colton that went out there. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've done some changing up there too in Denver that has been kind of under the radar. It hasn't really been reported a lot, but I'm looking forward to watching it, that series in particular, but I don't think massive changes. No, I don't.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. All right, next question. Danko, question. Who do Oilers prefer to play in round 1, Kings or Vegas? Also, what are the best and worst NHL playoff beard stash Pierre's witness up close? Thanks, gentlemen. Laney McDonald has to be the king in my eyes.
What's that?
The mustache. Laney McDonald with the mustache.
Well, his mustache is the best. The Maloney. I'll tell you one thing. The Maloney brothers, when they played for the Rangers back in the 70s, those guys could grow beards in a day. It was unbelievable. Dave and Donnie Maloney, how quick they could grow beards. It was just crazy. So they had the real big, heavy beards. Sidney Crosby didn't have a very good beard. I don't think he still does. So I would
No,
just,
Brad Marchand doesn't either.
no, Martian.
Yeah.
It must be a maritime thing because
Who
Martian
knows?
doesn't have a
Lucky for
very
them,
good
I'm
one.
jealous. I hate having to shave so much.
Oh, Jimmy, it's pretty funny. But who
Pat
would
Maroon.
Edmonton? Who would? Yeah,
Pat Maroon had a good one.
he has a heavy
in
beard.
Tampa days.
What's interesting? He said, who would Oilers prefer playing, the Kings or Vegas? I'd say probably the Kings.
Yeah, I would too.
I would, I would not be in a rush to want to play Vegas.
Nope, especially right now with them coming in at the 8th seed. Yeah, I wouldn't want to either. I watched that game last night too when I got home, by the way. All right, next question. Jeffrey B. I know if it's a difficult subject for you, Pierre. Are you disappointed Pittsburgh waited till after the trade deadline to start putting together a run just to have their playoff hopes not in their hands?
It doesn't matter to me because I didn't coach any of the guys that are there. And the guy that I care the most about, Marion Lemieux, is kind of removed from the organization right now. But I do know a lot of the players that are there, and I felt bad for them because they gave everything they had. They really did. They gave everything they had. I mean, I watched Sid this whole year. That guy sold out every single night. Letang, I know there were some nights where he didn't have his A game, but he sold out every night. He worked his tail off.
Yep.
Brian Russ, same thing. And then you watch the growth of a player like Drew O'Connor, and you're saying, man, that guy's going to be a good player for a long time.
Yeah.
So I saw some positive. The guy that I felt the worst for, Jimmy, I got to tell you, I felt bad for Geno Malkin. I really did. He had a tough year. And I really felt bad for Tristan Jarry.
Yeah,
I really did. He's a tremendous teammate, hard worker. He just didn't have it. For whatever reason, he just didn't have his A game all year.
for sure. And speaking of the Penguins, a former Penguin, by the way, Pierre, I'm sure you saw it. Marc-Andre Fleury signs a 1-year extension. More flour for the NHL. I love it. Good for him.
I think it's great and good for Billy Guerin to realize the importance of a veteran player like that who's an amazing teammate. He'll be a great mentor for Jesper Wallstedt.
There you go.
And also for Gustafsson. Marc-Andre will never cause problems. He's a tremendous, tremendous guy. I thought that's money well spent. It's not just an addition to your roster. It's an addition to the coaching staff. He's a mentor for a lot of those guys.
And remember, Pierre, at the deadline, when they gave him the option to go to a contender, he said, nope, I want to stay with these guys and help them.
I like what he said about his wife, Veronique. She really likes it in Minnesota, and his children like it there too. So that's positive as well.
Hockey.
Yep.
All right. Next question. Ron LaRock, do the Rangers play Rempe? I think he would hurt them if they do.
I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean,
that's an interesting observation.
The one thing I'd say, if Tom Wilson starts to run around, I wouldn't be surprised if Rempe's dressed as a nuclear deterrent. I don't know if they do it for game one, but, again, a series can get away from you fast if you lose on home ice, as you were saying correctly before. So maybe Rempe plays or dresses for game one, and they're selective of how they deploy him. Because one of the things you heard me say, if I'm Washington, I'm coming hard after that defense because after the top six, there's not a lot there in terms of organizational depth.
Yeah.
And so, physical targeting and it's not dirty. It's not malicious. It's not trying to injure guys. It's trying to break guys down because they want to make it a really tough game, 5, 6, and 7. Yeah. And that's what you do early on. And so maybe Rempe's going to be the nuclear deterrent. We'll see. But I would probably have him ready.
Measure the temperature.
And then, temperature of the series and see where it is.
One thing, too, for him, too, whether he plays or not, is great learning experience for him to not just be, a lot of people right now just look at him as an enforcer, quote unquote, instead of a Tom Wilson type who's more than that, who can play the game, who can be effective in so many different ways other than just fighting. I think this could be a great learning experience to see what they've got on the other side, Pierre.
Great point. Really good point. Yep.
All right, next question. Randy Workman, Jimmy and Pierre, how do the Leafs use Nick Robinson in the playoffs?
Well, Robertson's an important player because he can skate and manufacture offense. He could be a guy that the Boston Bruins don't pay nearly enough attention to because they're worried about Nylander, they're worried about Tavares, they're worried about, obviously, Marner, they're worried about Nyes, they're worried. So how he could be the guy that sneaks under the radar. I don't think they have to change how they use him the way they used him all year. But There are two guys in that series, Robertson and McMahon. Big guys that can move, and they can make a difference.
You know who I think could be a real thorn in the Bruins side? Is a guy that was on their team last year, Tyler Bertuzzi.
He could.
I could see him playing a little.
Either that or somebody's going to take a run at him early.
Yep. Or maybe somebody takes a run at him. Yeah, that's good. I won't say who, but
that's why I'm not going to say who.
Yeah, me neither, but I think we're on the same wavelength. All right, next question. Morantz, gentlemen, in your opinion, who would you give an A+ report card to for this season on the Habs roster?
Mike Matheson, Nick Suzuki, Slavkovsky. I'm just going over the roster in my mind. Caden Gooley.
Mm-hmm.
I'd give Montembeau an A, not an A+.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody else nobody would be below a C.
Okay. You know who I think made a really late comeback, might have even pulled off a B-? Brendan Gallagher had a great finish to the season.
He did.
Kudos to him. Kudos to him for that.
Yeah, no, I'm happy for, as you know, Jimmy, what I think of Brendan. Yeah. And so I'm really happy for him.
Character guy. I'm glad. I was happy to see that.
All
right, next question. Ron LaRoque, does San Jose have any good D in their system? Yeah, but they need better. Let's just leave it at that, huh? There we go. All right, Jeffrey B. Josh Anderson's not below a C?
No, I'd say he's a C. I'm being honest. Josh needs to do more offensively. But
I don't think it was lack of effort, though. Do you, Pierre?
Yeah, there are maybe let's just say, use 70 games as a target. If he played 55 of those 70 well, I mean, with effort, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So I know people are ticked off because he's not scoring. I get that, but I would have him as a C.
Yep.
Hard for me to put him below that because he can hit and he can forecheck. I mean, he just needs to score. I don't get why he's not scoring more. I just don't get it.
Pierre, if you have, I don't know what management's thinking, but you sit with him in his exit meetings, whether those were today, tomorrow, whenever they are, I don't know. And what are you saying to him, regardless of what you might be thinking you might do with him in the offseason, but you got to go on the, under the inclination that you are going to bring him back. So you say to him what to improve in the offseason?
Well, you got to sit down and say, what do you like about your season? What don't you like? Put it in his lap. Ask him to challenge himself. And then just say, look, we got to have a lot more from you. So how can we help you get better? Mm-hmm. And I'd put it right in his lap and make sure. And if he says, well, I didn't really have a bad year, then that's where you got to start to hit back and say, whoa, stop right here. And, I would ask him to compare himself to a player in the league that he thinks he can be like.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he says, I can be like player X, the next call is down to the video room and say, get me a pump-up tape on player X and put it in Josh Anderson's email and send it to him before he leaves town and make sure he watches it. And then you say to Josh, we're going to have a tape sent to you. Send us a report back on what you liked or didn't like about this player that you think you're a lot like.
Okay.
That's how I would handle him. He should probably have the most interesting of all the exit meetings there, I think.
Yeah.
What about better?
What about also Pierre saying, I know we're going years back, but say to him, why do you think you were acquired here? What do you think you were brought? I know it's a different management group, so I don't know if that
doesn't
works.
Matter. That's a good question.
Right.
That's a good way to look at it. I would say that he's going to say for size, for speed, for scoring ability. Those are like throwaway lines.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want him to tell me, what player do you like in the league?
I like that the best. Yeah.
You can be like.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he says player X, I'm calling my video guy right away and I'm saying, get me 5 minutes, get me 7 minutes of player X.
Yep.
And send it to him right away. And then I want a written report from the guy.
All right. Good stuff. I like it. Because I still think he can become a good player again. I really do. I still believe
So do I.
All right.
Jeffrey B's not wrong. Jeffrey B's not wrong what he said.
No.
You're not wrong.
Next question. Saul Semper. Thoughts on Luke Richardson? Love him.
Love's pretty deep, Jimmy. I'm not going to go
No.
there. I like him. I like
Yeah.
him as a person. I liked him a lot as a player, and I like him a lot as a coach. He didn't have a lot to work with, so I'm going to say the jury's still out.
Mm-hmm.
But he did some really good stuff in Montreal as an assistant. I'll tell you that. And I do think he can get some stuff done in Chicago, but they're still a long way away. Jimmy, we talk about defense. I know they got what they call prospects on defense.
Yeah.
They need a lot of work with those prospects.
You know what I'm doing right now? If I'm Kyle Davidson, I am putting the word out there. What are you going to give me for Seth Jones? He had a good finish to the season, Pierre. Could be some value back on him. Maybe. I don't know.
If I were Seth Jones, I'd be going in and asking, what's the plan here? Because I want a chance to win.
Mm-hmm.
I'm serious. And that's not a knock on Seth. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
No, I think he's a tremendous player. Most people do. But at some point, you want to win, too. And if they think that their rebuild's another 3 years, those are a lot of years in Seth's career. You may want to maybe go somewhere else.
That's what I'm saying. Investigate that. All right. We got time for 3 more here.
Keep going. We're good. All right.
Okay. Don't want you to be late, my friend.
No, I won't be late. Thanks.
Jason Logan, afternoon, gents. Why, when some rookies sign a contract, do they sign it quicker than others? There can't be much difference.
I think you're probably talking about college players there.
Mm-hmm.
Some guys tell their agents, I don't want to leave school. And then the team has to do a little, back channel stuff with the player or the player's family. Other times the team's not 100% sure on the player coming out. Some other times, and this is where it gets a little tricky, they offer the player an American League deal, not an NHL deal, and the player still has time left at school, and he says, you know what, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go back to school, get my degree, and then I can always get the American League deal next year. So there's a lot. It's not one size fits all. There are a lot of different reasons why.
All right, next question. John Smith, I'd love to hear what you think of the Habs' top 6 will look like in 2 years, barring any trades. It's tough because I think there are going to be trades.
I do too.
Yeah, so I don't know. That's like kind of an incomplete answer.
I would say this. I'd say I don't think they're trading Matheson. I don't think they're trading Gooley. I don't think they're trading Mayu. I don't think they're going to trade Hudson. So that's 4 of your 6. What are they going to do with Struble? What are they going to do with Harris? What are they going to do with Savard? What are they going to do? I mean, I don't know. But I do think they're going to use they're going to use some of their assets that they've drafted on defense, I believe, to try to get more offense.
Yeah. I think it was, I saw some snippets. I'm going to watch the whole thing, but it seemed pretty evident to me from what I saw of Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes today. They're taking the next step. It's time to move up the ladder here and take the next step in this rebuild and compete. I think that's coming for sure. We've been saying that for a while, Pierre, and they reiterated it today. So, all right, next question. Alex Ivanovsky, what do you think the Penguins should do? Another year, another no playoffs on their aging core. I think it's time to do a full rebuild. I think you're right, Alex.
I think we were saying that when we started the show.
Yeah, this show and maybe a few other shows we've done. Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, I feel so bad for Sid.
I do.
I really do. I mean, people, and how about? I find it really amazing, Jimmy, that people are kind of saying, "Well, that's 2 years in a row he hasn't been in the playoffs." Are you kidding me? Like it's his fault?
Yeah. Pierre, the problem is a lot of these people that are supposedly insiders or watching game, they're not watching the games enough. They're just not.
They're not.
If you can watch as much as you and I watched the Pittsburgh Penguins and say that he might be part of the I don't know what planet you're on or what's going on.
So I think what Kyle Dubas has to do it's multi-level task.
He's got a huge job.
They got to rebuild their farm system.
Mm-hmm.
They got to rebuild their draft in terms of the number of players that they'll have that can play. It's legitimate prospects, and they got to redo a lot of their NHL team.
Yep.
That's a lot of heavy lifting. So that's not all going to happen right away. You got to prioritize what you think as a manager. I would imagine as long as he's got Crosby as an asset, he's going to want to try to keep the big team relevant. So, the trading of Gensel, whether you liked it or not, it brings back the potential for more assets for them. And Bunting was a good fit. Bunting's fit there way better than he fit in Carolina. I'll tell you that. Way better. But I mean, is that going to be enough? And when Sid and Gino are gone, like, is Michael Bunting going to be able to carry the mail? No, he's not.
No.
But that's not a knock on the kid either, by the way. That's not
it's just reality.
He's a support player. That's what he is.
Exactly.
So for Alex, who I know has got unbelievable passion for the Penguins, that's a tough question, except to say that they've got a lot of different platforms they have to address.
The one thing I will say, Pierre, is, there's a lot of people so surprised, like, oh my God. I mean, it was kind of evident. We said it coming into this season, Pierre. I mean, they were saying, all right, this is one more time for the core here. We're going to try and do it. We're going to see what happens. But then they're probably going to have to go in a rebuild direction, whether it's a retool, what have you, whatever you want to call it. This was coming. It shouldn't be a shock to anyone.
So I wonder,
it's here.
Yeah. So my question to you is, what does that do to Carlson? Do you think at the end of his career is going to want to be part of that?
No, I don't think he wants to be, but he might not have a choice, and the team might not have a choice. I mean, who's taking that contract?
No, that's my point.
Yeah. He's kind of stuck. They're kind of stuck with each other. So make the best of it. All right. Next question. Jeffrey B. Granted, it's an extremely small sample size. Is Lane Hutson's performance in 2 games that were basically playoff intensity, good point, a strong compliment to what the NCAA can develop? That's a great question.
The answer is yes.
Yep.
The answer is yes. And so what a well-phrased question by Jeffrey B. Matthew Nyes. I remember when Matthew Nyes left Minnesota last year, and everybody said, well, he's going straight to the Marlies. No, he's not. He's going straight to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he's going to play really well. I will never forget this. People saying, well, Brock Faber's going to leave the University of Minnesota and go to the Minnesota Wild, so he's going to have to go to Iowa. I'm like, no, he's not. He's going right to the Minnesota Wild. Are you kidding me? So I get it. People don't have enough time in their day to watch all these leagues. I totally understand it. I mean that. Mm-hmm. But rather than say, well, he's going to just say, you know what, let me wait and see.
Yeah.
Let's just see how it plays out.
Exactly.
Rather than saying he's destined for the American Hockey League.
Yeah.
Because I never thought Lane Hutson was going to the American Hockey League. And I said it for the last 3 years before he was even drafted.
Yeah. So, I'm interested, Pierre, and Ryan Leonard, to see what happens with that.
You can't miss. Can't miss.
I know, but does he come out?
Cutter Gauthier can't miss. This is to Jeffrey B's point, okay?
Yeah.
Can't miss. Jackson Blake can't miss.
Yep.
Like, all these kids coming out, there's some that will miss, and I'm not going to say their names because that's inappropriate. I'll brag on the kids that can't miss.
Yep.
I think that's more appropriate. Like, so this is for San Jose people. Will Smith, when he's physically ready, is going to be a dynamic player for you.
He's going to be so fun.
He's going to be dynamic. It's just he needs a little more time. Gabe Perreault needs a little more time physically.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Ryan Leonard does not. Ryan
Leonard's ready, man.
Cutter Gauthier does not.
Both of those guys are nasty business.
Macklin Celebrini does not.
Yep. Excuse me.
So.
Yep. All
great
right.
Question from Jeffrey B.
Good stuff. All right. What do we got left, guys? Anything? Kit Norton, Suzuki says Slav can be a top 5 wing in their league. Do you agree? Also, Pierre, you talk about showing tape of players. When I see Slav along the boards below the net, I see shades of Peter Forsberg. Whoa.
Kit, I see shades of Jaromir Jagr.
There we go. High praise from both of you.
Just the board play. I didn't say the rest of it. The board play.
Yeah.
And when he was drafted, that's what I talked about, because obviously there's not as much board play over in Europe than there is here, but he was the dominant board player when he played in Turku, in Finland. So no, that's great. And I agree with Suzuki on Slavkovsky.
Yep.
He will be. He's going to be arguably the best power forward in the league.
Pierre too. He's got a little Yager personality as well, which I like too. It's kind of off the beaten path, funny dude, you know.
Yeah, well, that's good. All I
right.
can tell you is Yarmir's still playing hockey. We'll see if the kid has the same amount
Wow.
of passion as Yarmir.
Wow.
It's
All right.
that's why I'm just telling you, Jimmy. Yarmir is really special, okay, in a lot of ways. But the number one thing he is special at is passion for the game.
Yep.
His passion for hockey is phenomenal.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I love it. All right, next question. Randy Workman, Jimmy, do you think Alain Vigneault makes sense as a Sabre coach? You know, honestly, Randy, good question. I haven't thought of him. Haven't heard his name yet in that conversation, but he could be. You know, I don't know, Pierre. You know Alain better than me. You know his body of work better. I still think. I still think they need somebody that's going to make them mean. That's what I think.
Craig Berube, line one.
That's where I'm going. That's where I'm going. There you go. All right, next question. Alex Ovanowski, what's up, Alex? What do you think the Red Wings need to do to end the rebuild and start the process of becoming a contender year in and year out? I really wanted them to get in just kind of to start the process now. I think what we saw, the process of getting in, not to overuse the word process. I think the process we just saw, the battle they gave and they showed to get in, I think that was a huge step. Even though they didn't make it, they played playoff caliber games. They clearly didn't give up in any game they played. I think they did grow. And I think obviously there's more steps to be taken, but it goes back to what we say about so many teams. And I think they've got it coming, Pierre, because you've talked about these guys. They've got some goalies coming. And I think once those guys arrive, I think that they will get to the next step.
They got goalies coming. They've got defensemen coming, especially Irvin.
Already there. Yep.
Edvinsson, I should say, Edvinsson. And then they need a little more scoring from their bottom six. And, you know, whether they think they have it internally or not, that's up to them. But they definitely have players coming. And so I think they're well on their way to being – if they're not in the playoffs next year, there'll be serious collateral damage there.
Yeah.
There'll be serious collateral damage.
They're what, 4 years in on Eisman? Am I right? It's 4?
It's four or five, I think.
I mean, we always say that, right? It's the typical 5-year plan. So next year that's the year.
By the way, this isn't on Stevie. This is where they were growing too.
Yeah.
So no, I think he's done a fantastic job there with Chris Draper, Sean Horkoff, and Håkan Anderson, and all their people. They've done a tremendous job there. Really, really good.
I'll tell you what. I watched that game, and I listened to our buddy Ken. What he said then last night and what he has been saying on Twitter today and just the vibe there, they see it. The people that know the Red Wings that are around that team right now, they see it. They like the job that Stevie Y is doing right now. So if you're a Red Wings fan and you're watching this, don't be worried just yet.
No.
Give it a year. You're going the right direction.
100% there.
Yep. All right, next question. Vincenzo Izzy. He's not Italian at all. Question. The Habs had bad second periods throughout the season. I know that the bench is far away, especially for the defense. Do teams across the league change the way they play during the second period? I'll let that go to Pierre.
The answer is yes, Vincenzo, and good for you.
Great question.
It's called the stretch pass, and it's the period of the long change, and it's a real difficult thing. And yes, if you don't have elite skating defensemen, or if you don't have people running the bench properly, or your players aren't schooled on proper line changes, you could be in trouble. So the answer is yes.
Yep. And that's why you see such a premium on those puck-moving defensemen, right, Pierre?
Yep. Well, the answer is yes. So it's a great vision by Vincenzo.
For sure. All right. Next question. Alex Ovanowski again. If Crosby gets traded, it helps everyone. The longer he's there, the more they are stuck in limbo. It's not a knock on Crosby. It's just a fact. Am I missing anything?
No,
I don't disagree with that. I just don't think Sid wants to leave.
No. We'll see what happens at the end of this year. You know, the one thing I'd say is he never really addressed the Gensel trading.
No.
So, you know, there's a couple places where it makes sense for Sid to go.
He's going to be training with somebody that I'm sure is going to heavily recruit him.
Yeah, well, this happened. So I'll just use this as an example. When Daniel Alfredson was in Ottawa and he was a captain of the Ottawa Senators, there was a full-scale recruitment done by numerous people with the Detroit Red Wings, and I'm talking about players, not management people, to get him to go. And he did.
Because of all the Swedes?
Yeah. And he did go. And he was good there, but, the team was starting to descend a little bit, and they weren't able to get to the next level. And they haven't been able to get to the next level since. Yeah. But I could see the same thing happening where there'd be a full-on recruitment of Sid by a couple teams. Yeah.
From a guy that's playing the Winnipeg Jets. I'll leave it at that. All right, next question. Randy Workman, Jimmy, and Pierre, do you guys feel that teams often go too fast with their prospects? Yeah, I think it happens still, but I think we're heavily against that.
We are, but the realistic part of it is that
the salary cap.
The salary cap. Now it's going up this year, what, a 4 million, whatever it is.
Yeah,
so that'll make it a little bit easier, but still,
there's a lot of teams still recovering from COVID, Pierre.
There are. I know, spot on. So we're on the same page. So that's one of the issues. But I do think teams rush their players, and it's a lot of times the general manager saying to his owner, "Look at what we have. This is what we've drafted. This is on my watch. You have to salute my good work." That's not how to run a railroad, by the way.
Exactly.
That's not on a railroad.
All right. I think we got one left. What do we got? Danko, would solid UFA vets like Marchessault and William Carrier be fits for the Habs off season, or should they try to land younger pieces? I think they'd be great fits. I just don't know if they want to go from Vegas to Montreal. And that's no knock on Montreal.
No.
Pierre and I have said we think the route for the Canadians is via trade and NCAA free agents.
And even major junior free agents.
And even major junior free agents.
So, I think that's the way. It's going to be very difficult. There's more taxation issues happening in Canada as we speak. Yep. It's not going to be easy to get free agents to go to Canada. It's not, I don't just mean Montreal. I mean all of Canada. It's going to be really difficult.
I mean, let me give a perfect example, Pierre. Noah Hannafin. He probably could have got more on the open market, but he stayed in Vegas. Warm weather, great living, up-and-coming city, and no taxes. There you go. And a great team that competes every year. So there you go.
Yep.
All right, Pierre.
Scotty Bowman tomorrow.
I'm really looking forward to it, my friend. Listen, you have a wonderful time at this speech.
Thank you.
Knock them dead as you always do, my friend, and tell them the eye test says hello. And thanks to everyone in the viewers listen there. Thanks to our new sponsors, TCS and CBET. We appreciate you joining the I-Team here. And tomorrow, like Pierre just said, Scotty Bowman to help us tee up the 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs. Enjoy the hockey tonight. And by the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't say to all the Arizona Coyotes fans, treasure tonight, enjoy it. And I say all the time, I don't like my locks, but there you go. Howl in the desert tonight. Howl in the desert. This has been another edition of the Eye Tests on the Sick Podcast Network.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. Brought to you by TCS Customs and Logistics. Moving pieces, delivering peace of mind.